Hi, and welcome back to PDA Dad UK. In this episode, I'm going to be looking at autism, hyperfocus, and how flow states relate to both. So as I say, welcome back to PDA Dad UK. Before I do go on, please, the usual, can you go hit like, hit subscribe and ring the bell? You'll always know when new content's going up, and it makes a big difference to who sees this. Just having those people that are following and clicking the like means it just gets the message out there. It means a lot to me personally, so if you could go and do that, that'd be fantastic. Also, remember, I now have merchandise available. If you head over to the link in the description or up here, I think it is, you can go to the Redbubble site. I've got t-shirts, phone covers, diaries, all kinds of things are on there, and everything that's sold, the money goes directly to the PDA Society to raise money for the great work that they do. So please do go and do that as well. As I say, in this episode, I want to look at autism and hyperfocus specifically within autism, and how flow states relate to that. And this is something that came about from the interview I did with Hannah Harris on my last episode. The link will be in the description for that as well. It was a fascinating interview, and it was just really interesting seeing how somebody who lives with PDA day to day really is affected by it and what they can do. But part of that conversation was the issue of flow states, and Hannah talked about flow states and how they relate, and it's something that tweaked my interest, and I've been doing some research on it since, and it's something that I have found to be absolutely fascinating. So I guess we've got to go into exactly what it is. And we've talked about hyperfocus on this before. You recall a long while back in one of my earliest videos, I interviewed my good friend Emily from Arty Bohemian. Now, Emily's an amazing autistic person that I know. She's a really good friend, and she does this incredible artwork. It produces jewelry and all kinds of bits and pieces. But really, she uses hyperfocus to really help target her business. So when she's in the zone, and we're going to talk about the zone as part of this, but she gets into that state and time can just vanish. She's just completely immersed in what she's doing. And the nature of her writing is there's always something slightly different to keep her dopamine levels up and keep her focused. And you recall we spoke about dopamine in a recent episode as well. Link will be in the description for that too. And that role of dopamine was just fascinating to me, and how it really does trigger that. And it triggers that hyperfocus. It's when we find something that we find truly interesting. That's where our dopamine levels are released and we become focused. Now, it's something neurotypicals don't necessarily experience in the same way or at the same level that a lot of neurodivergent people do. But it is something that we do experience. Best example I can give is when you're playing a game. If there's any gamers out there, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not a big gamer, but I've gamed in the past. I've had my PlayStations and Xboxes and all sorts, and you get into games. But there's something that happens when you're really into a game and everything else sort of shuts down around you, and you're really focused on it, and you're just in the game, and hours can pass because you're just constantly focused, and everything else will takes a back seat to what you're doing within that game. It becomes immersive, if you like. Another great example for me is music. So I love music. That's well established. I play guitar, I'm a musician, I write music, and I love listening to music. And I can listen to the same song on repeat when it's a new song and just really absorb it and get lost in it. When I'm writing or when I'm playing guitar, I can play for hours and not realize just how much time's gone, because my focus is just all naturally shifted towards what I'm playing and what I'm feeling as part of that. It just consumes me, if you like. As I say, I become totally immersed in that environment, and that's what I do. Hyperfocus, that's basically a form of hyperfocus, and it relates to these flow states, and it's where everything else sort of takes a back seat. Now, reading up on this, and there's different theories and different ideas that go around it. I think the one that I really found interesting was an autistic individual who was talking about the fact that they experience the emotions differently to how myself as a neurotypical would. And what it is by that, she was saying that our emotions sit in the foreground as neurotypicals. We respond emotionally a lot of the time, not over-respond emotionally all the time. Our emotions are there. What we're feeling is present in our day-to-day and, the moments that we live in our life. for a lot of neurodivergent people, those emotions actually take a back seat. And it's almost part of that, masking or repression, if you like. It's there just getting in the background. And it's when it becomes overwhelming, when it's built up too much, that it all explodes and comes out in the form of a meltdown, or it's a shutdown, or whatever the case may be. But that's what happens, that the emotions are just bubbling away in the background, but they're not experienced at the same level that myself as a neurotypical would experience them on that level. So a lot of autistic people, a lot of neurodivergent people, ADHDers very much so, can slip into this hyperfocus quite easily when they find something that captures their attention. And it's one of those things, finding that thing that captures the attention can be the tricky part. But once it's there, they flow into this state of hyperfocus really, really easily. Hyperfocus is a fascinating thing, and it's something that I envy in many ways. I experience it at a different level, I guess, in that when I'm in certain things, as I say, music's a great example. If I'm writing, I'm writing a book at the moment, myself and my colleague Chris from the Grumpy Gits, we're going to be doing a book together. And when I'm writing in that, I find that same thing. My focus goes entirely on that. Everything else recedes into the background, and I can take hours and hours and then think to myself afterwards, where's the time gone? It's that whole, the theory of relativity, I guess, time relativity. When we're totally engaged, our concept of time vanishes, and we can be hours later, and it's like, oh, whoa. It's like it with a good conversation. If I'm in a good conversation with someone, we're having a really deep talk or a really interesting talk, we can natter away for hours, and then suddenly it's like, midnight, and you're thinking, where did the time go? What happened there? It's because you've been so focused, you've had that hyperfocus take place. For many autistic individuals and a lot of neurodivergent individuals in different ways, they will experience this hyperfocus, almost something they seek out. So what can happen is when there's a special interest, and you hear a lot about special interest in neurodivergence and how autism plays out, a lot of neurodivergent people will find special interest things that really do grab their attention, and they seek it out. And it can be a topic, it can be something that's being done. A lot of the time it does involve gaming and stuff like that. It's a world they can escape to that feels safe, but it's also it's interesting, it's exciting, and it's firing that dopamine in the background that allows them to continue that focus and gain that enjoyment and joy from it, if you like. And so you'll recall I spoke to my good friend Alan Smith not so long ago about his ADHD, and he spoke about hyperfocus and the role of dopamine in that. What really got me with that was him saying he's a fantastic musician, a musician I'm envious of. I wish I could be half as good as he is. But I said, is that hyperfocus the reason that you are so good with music? He said, it's the reason I'm good. It's also the reason I'm not great. And that really stuck with me. I've mentioned it a few times since, because it's something that just sort of plays over in my head as that's such a really rare insight into what it is. And it's because the dopamine's firing for that period of time. He's really, really invested until it's not as exciting anymore, and that edge lifts off, the dopamine reduces, and he just finds himself, okay, I'm moving on to the next thing. And he'll go from topic to topic or item to item in different ways to recapture that. It's on a subconscious level, but it's just a fascinating insight into how that role of dopamine really plays into this hyperfocus state. And they call it this flow state, and it's where things just get into the right place. And this is where we come to the zone, and that's how we often describe it when we're, personally, me as a neurotypical, when I'm experiencing that's what I call it. I'm really in the zone at the moment. And somebody will come in and ring on the doorbell, and you go, what? Whoa! Or somebody calls downstairs, like, "What are you listening to?" I was just really zoned out. I'm sorry, I was really in the zone there. That's exactly what that is. You've hit that flow state where you're challenged, but you're also finding things easier. There's a challenge there in that it's not going to be just something that you just, done. There has to be something that's engaging your brain, bringing it forward. So taking it back to my friend Emily, Arty Bohemian, and the stuff that she makes, when she's in that zone, she's totally focused on things, and it's exciting. What she's creating is triggering that dopamine. It's becoming an exciting thing. It's engaging her. She's in that flow state where your productivity and the challenge meet, if you like, and you're achieving something, and that can be achieved on whatever level. It might just be you've reached a certain level in a game. It might be that you've cracked that scale that you were trying to work out on the piano or the guitar. It could be that you made a Lego set and you've just completed it and you get that sense of achievement. But it could be something as simple as, I just really enjoyed doing that, and it just sets that dopamine off, as I say, and you get that feeling of goodness. And we seek dopamine. We're dopamine addicts, if you like, all of us. People who are usually really into extreme sports have this thing with dopamine where they're likely not producing enough. A lot of people with ADHD become extreme sports fans because that's the way their dopamine fires, and that's how they get that excitement back and the dopamine firing. It's just such an incredibly interesting area. So it's really good to identify for our kids and for people that we know, people that may be caring for, who are neurodivergent, or just friends, family members that, are looking for that little bit of extra support, identifying the areas in which they find themselves hyper-focusing. And that is just such a rich thing. So for my daughter, Roblox has been a really interesting one because she finds these games on Roblox and she wants to build the houses. And there's one particular, I think it's called Pet Life or something like that. Or basically you achieve pets, but you build houses and you get, you level up in the quality of the house and all the stuff that you get with your home and you can put in there. And she loves it. She gets completely lost in it. And if she's experiencing high anxiety, if she's at that point where we're heading towards a meltdown, and we've spoken about meltdowns and how to identify the triggers and keep your eye open for the different things that are taking place that are going to lead us towards that meltdown. When we get to that point, when I'm seeing that, one of the best things I can do is have a tablet or a phone on standby. Why don't you sit down for 5 minutes, just play a game for a bit. Why don't you play your Roblox? And she'll get on there and she'll start playing these games, and she just loves it. And you can see her instantly reduce the anxiety because it's pushing, as we said before, those emotions that we live with at the front of our mind. And so for her as an autistic, her as a PDA, she's pushing that back a lot of the time. But as she's experiencing the emotion as a sudden whelm, that's where we get to meltdowns, shutdowns, and all that kind of stuff. What the hyperfocus is doing is pushing those emotions back. If you think about the times that you've been in that situation where you yourself are in the zone, you're hyper-focused on something, you don't feel a lot of the other emotions that you might be doing. So, it's a great tip for if you're experiencing anxiety on any level. It's why people read books. It's why people listen to music. It's something to just focus yourself on that envelops. I used to be an avid reader. I don't get to read as much now, being a parent and all that kind of stuff. It's just not something that seems to happen. But I do read a lot of articles, not so much sort of books and novels now, but I read a lot of articles and a lot of information, a lot of stuff researching for this channel and getting this information. And when I'm reading like that, when I'm in that place, and it is, you just lose yourself. People say, don't you lose yourself in a book. You lose yourself in an article. It's the same sort of thing. That is hyperfocus. And if we understand that as our, neurotypical people, we can really understand the neurodivergent people in our life on a whole new level. And I'm finding this fascinating because it's this stuff that I can employ. So as I say, when my daughter's at that point and I can put that phone in front of her and just say, chill out, it's a great tool to help her regulate her emotions and take that worry away. When you're lying awake at night and you've got do you experience this? I get it quite a bit, where I can be fine all day when I'm finally lying down at night trying to go to sleep, and that's when my brain decides I'm going to worry about all these different things. I will start remembering things I said 20 years ago, and why did I was such an idiot, and you feel all the emotions that come with that, regret, and I must look so stupid, or I must have really offended that person. I'm such an idiot, and you go through all that, and it just plays, and you think, I could get out of my head, and you try and clear your mind, and it always sits there nattering in the back and comes in, I'm doing it again, and I do it quite a bit. I've got to say, those things just play up, especially at the moment with everything going on in the world. Wars and cost of living expenses and all this stuff coming up, and it's natural to worry, but it's not healthy to have that worry there constantly. I will then pick up a Kindle because that's, we're in 2022 and who has books anymore? I love books and I love proper books, but it's nice to have the convenience of just being able to pick up a Kindle and just have a look and start reading something, or reading an article on whatever. And I find that, again, it just refocuses my mind. I make sure the settings are so that blue light is filtered and all that kind of stuff, so it's not playing with my circadian rhythms and melatonin production. You can check out all that information as well. I'll put the link in the description on melatonin and how it affects people. But yeah, finding myself where I've got something that I can draw myself away, and that's where I find, I might only be reading for a couple of minutes. You get that thing where you've woken up and the phone's on your face, or the Kindle or your book is just lying there. I get that, I've done it again. I've fallen asleep on my phone, or it's just those things that take place. And I always think what people must do. My wife must look at me and go, "What's he on? What's he doing now?" Finding those things that we can hyper focus on help reduce anxiety, and this is why mindfulness and meditation have become such big things. And I think mindfulness and meditation can play in different ways. I know some people have religious conflict with it and stuff like that, but really, ultimately, it's just that getting in your place where you are creating a flow state that's going to work for you. You're calming your emotions. It's just taking that time to breathe and breathe and get on with your day, get on with what you're doing. They can be momentary and stuff like that. And, I got an Apple Watch recently, and there's a feature on there which reminds you to take a moment for mindfulness and stuff like that. I think it's really useful and really healthy stuff. And it's something I'm trying to employ more and more in my own goings on, I suppose. It's just a fascinating thing. If we can find those states for our kids, if we can identify the things that really do help them to decompress, it will lead to being able to reduce the frequency and potentially the intensity of meltdowns and shutdowns and stuff like that. Having a little toolkit with you, just a little sensory toolkit, or like I say, for me, it's just making sure her phone's with her, she's got it, and we can pull that out. She loves poppets. It might be just that she needs to just focus on the poppet for a bit. It's, the sensory thing. So, sensory toys, and they produce that, and they can get really focused on the different textures and stuff like that. Finding a book, there are some awesome kids books out there, and it could be that they're the textured books, that's not my whatever, all those books that are out there. Anything that's going to engage that side of things is just going to be really helpful. That's really all I've got to say on it. It was just something I'd noted and something I've found really fascinating, and I thought it was worth sharing with you guys. Please do go hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and you'll always know when I've got new episodes coming up. Please do go check out the Redbubble shop, and remember, everything that is made there, all proceeds go directly to the PDA Society. It's a fantastic charity and a worthy cause. Please do hop on that. I will see you again on the next episode. In the meantime, I hope you guys stay really safe.